What if I told you there's a post-war Italian racing bike nicknamed Long Leg that was so exclusive only about a dozen were ever made, and it could hit nearly 118 miles per hour on just a single cylinder? Ladies and gentlemen, what do you get when you cross a torpedo, a trumpet, and a Vespa with a superiority complex? No, not your cousin's DIY e-bike project. I'm talking about the Moto Guzzi Gambalunga. Yes, the Long Leg, which, by the way, has nothing to do with legs and everything to do with making your neighbor's cafe racer feel like a tricycle with self-esteem issues. I'm Timmy, and this is Timmy Tiny Wheels, where old bikes go to feel young again, and viewers go to avoid their spouses for 8 minutes. Before we jump into the spicy marinara of Italian motorcycle history, smash that subscribe button like you're revving a Guzzi in front of a Ducati dealership just to be petty. A long-legged legend is born. Let's rewind to the ruins of post-war Italy. It's the late 1940s. Pizza is still a local secret. The lira is nervous, and Moto Guzzi, yes, the Italian brand that made bikes faster than your friend's empty promises, is back in business. Enter the Moto Guzzi Gambalunga, a race-bred beast born sometime around 1946, refined through 1949, and produced in a whopping, wait for it, 12 or 13 units total. That's right, fewer than the number of people still using dial-up internet in Naples. The brain behind the madness was Giulio Carcano, Moto Guzzi's chief engineer and part-time suspension sorcerer. He took the pre-war racer, the Dondolino, and gave it longer legs, literally. They stretched the piston stroke to 90 millimeters, from 82 millimeters, while keeping the bore at 84 millimeters, earning the machine its lanky nickname Gambalunga. This wasn't your average cafe racer. No, sir. This was the elite-level factory machine, the crown jewel of Guzzi's racing lineup. Privateers? They got Dondolinos. Gambalunga? That was for the champions. One of them being Enrico Lorenzetti, who piloted this mechanical gazelle straight into the racing history books in the late 40s. The engine was a 498.5 cubic centimeters, single-cylinder four-stroke overhead valve, OHV, mounted horizontally. I'm not saying it looked like it was lying down on the job, but let's just say it had more chill than your neighbor who was just about to fix the fence. It was air-cooled, had an aluminium head, and drank from a Dell'Orto SS35 carburetor like a teenager at a soda fountain. Claimed power? Around 37 horsepower at 6,000 revolutions per minute, RPM. Although real-world dyno whispers say it was closer to 34 to 35 horsepower. At 5,800 revolutions per minute, RPM. Still plenty to send your mustache flying backward. Power went through a 4-speed gearbox, all transferred to the rear wheel by chain. Not that fancy shaft drive stuff for this one. You wanted speed? You got grease. Now here's where it gets juicy. The chassis. This thing had a double tubular culla aperta frame, which is Italian for open cradle, and also sounds like a lullaby with horsepower. The fuel tank was lightweight alloy, long, narrow, and shaped for slicing through air like a meatball through butter. And the oil tank? Tucked neatly under the seat, because Italians like their oil well hidden, like family secrets and tax filings. Let's talk forks. Not dinner forks. I mean the front suspension, and this one had what they called the biscuit fork. And no, you can't dip it in espresso. It was a leading link fork with 2 big old external hydraulic dampers, a brand new thing in its day, and first tested right here, on this bike, in the streets of Bergamo. The rear suspension was a swing arm setup with compression-style shocks, and all that meant this racer handled like it was glued to the road, unless the road was cobblestone, in which case you just prayed to Enzo Ferrari and held on. Brakes? Good old drum brakes, front and rear. Not much to say, except they stopped you eventually, which was just enough in the 1940s. Dry weight, a slender 120 kilograms, 265 pounds. That's lighter than your friend's ego after his DIY bike project fell apart on Instagram Live. Top speed, brace yourself, over 190 kilometers per hour, or about 118 miles per hour in 1951. That's basically warp speed when you're riding a cigarette-thin chassis with 37 horses trying to break free. And I think what impressed me the most, Besides the fact this bike was basically a missile in skinny jeans, is how it looked fast even when parked. That long tank, the squat seat, the frame that looked like it wanted to punch the wind in the face, it was aerodynamic design before anyone bothered naming it that. This wasn't some production line pretty boy. No, the Gambalunga was a hand-built diva with the voice of Pavarotti and the body of a greyhound. And you didn't just buy it, you had to earn it. Moto Guzzi didn't sell these at your local dealership next to the espresso machine. This was a factory race bike only, reserved for people who could win or at least crash gracefully in front of a crowd. So what happened to the Gambalunga? Well, like many beautiful Italian things, it had a short life and a long legacy. Production stopped around 1951, but its innovations lived on in later bikes, including Moto Guzzi's crazy V8 Screamer and the 350 Monocylindrico that Carcano also helped develop. And here's a fun fact, the fork they invented for the Gambalunga, that biscuit thing I mentioned earlier, they liked it so much they reused it on multiple race bikes throughout the 1950s. That's right, this bike's bones became Moto Guzzi gospel. But Gambalunga wasn't just technical wizardry, it was myth material. The name itself, Gambalunga, or long leg, became so iconic that Moto Guzzi's marketing team in the 1970s couldn't help themselves. They rolled out an English ad that read, "Long-legged and easy to live with." I mean, it sounds more like a dating profile than a bike ad, but hey, it works. Now I know what you're thinking. Okay, Timmy, but how many kidneys do I have to sell to get one? Well, good news. You only need both your kidneys and your neighbors. Since the Gambalunga was never sold publicly, there was no original manufacturer's suggested retail price. But on the auction block, this thing commands respect. In 2004, a 1948 Moto Guzzi Gambalunga, once owned by champion Enrico Lorenzetti, was sold at Bonham's for $50,600. In 2024, another example from the same year was auctioned at Retromobile for €19,668, around $22,000. And today, one of the few surviving Gambalunga motorcycles is listed for sale on Classic Driver for €65,000. Approximately $70,725, which only confirms that, despite the variation in sale prices over time, the model's collectible value remains exceptional. So what do I think of the Moto Guzzi Gambalunga? I think it was brave, beautiful, borderline insane. A machine that didn't try to be practical, just fast and unforgettable. And while it never got mass-produced, that was probably for the best. This wasn't a bike for the masses. This was a bike for gladiators, for artists, for maniacs in goggles who thought 190 kilometers per hour was a reasonable speed on post-war roads with more craters than compliments at a family reunion. Thanks for watching Timmy Tiny Wheels, where the bikes are rare, the facts are real, and the jokes are only mostly inappropriate strangers behind you where they belong.